In 2009, Dawkins was behind a campaign for putting advertisements on buses in Britain. Relax, there's probably no God. Very highly certain there's no God. Karl Marx, who said that religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of a heartless world, and the soul of soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people. Karl Marx said it. What's his authority? Quote from Francis Crick, the rigidly atheistic co-discoverer of DNA. Your birth and death are no more meaningful than a bunch of molecules coming together by chemical reactions and again coming apart by chemical reactions. That's all that you say it is. Feelings, emotions, bad, good, fact, falsity, morals, love, all just thoughts due to chemicals, nothing more than that. No actual meaning. As Rick Sanchez, whoever he may be, said, you're just an inert chunk of randomly assembled molecules drifting wherever the universe blows you. In effect, we are telling people that, well, you're just chemicals. You, as a distinct person and personality, do not exist. Your life has no meaning. We have whole generations who have been told that they are, in effect, nothing but bags of chemicals with no intrinsic purpose, just a cosmic mistake that will soon be snuffed out and cease to exist forever. Dust thou art, and unto dust thou shalt return, says the Bible. Chemicals thou art, and unto chemicals thou shalt return. I want to scream, I'm not chemicals. You can't reduce me to a mathematical, scientific formula, what to speak of the whole universe. Even if you want to say that every living being is just the product of some chemical formulae, there still remains the dichotomy of an entity different from the formula who's saying that it's a formula. Here's a person saying there's no such thing as a person. Those who deny the spiritual do a great disservice by trivializing all suffering. It's just all chemical reactions. Julian Huxley, biologist, famous biologist, said that the evolution of life is no longer a theory, it is a fact and the basis of all our thinking. Stephen Hawking, the scientific account is complete, theology is unnecessary. This is atheistic dogma, which, whether explicitly stated or not, the message is there. You as a discrete person do not exist. There's no need of thinking of anything spiritual or God. We're just a bunch of chemicals. Stephen Hawking tells us that everything that exists because of the laws of nature. Stephen Meyer pointed out the basic flaw in this assertion, that the laws of nature pertain to matter, and they cannot exist independently of matter. The laws of nature are descriptive. They don't cause anything. The laws of nature or of science are inert. They don't create anything. There must be input from outside the laws, which points to God, of course. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the tremendous influence in promoting atheistic ideas of three major intellectuals in the last 100 years and a bit more. Marx, I already mentioned, tremendously influential, with his famous statement that religion is the opium of the people. Sigmund Freud, the founder of psychotherapy, another major influential atheistic figure. I once saw in Foyle's bookshop, a major bookshop in central London, there was a whole room dedicated to books by and mostly about Freud. And there was, to whet the appetite of the potential book purchaser, there was a little write-up on Freud for them to read. There it was written that although Freud's ideas have mostly been shown to be wrong, he still remains a tremendously influential figure, something like that. One of his major ideas, that the whole idea of God is just an illusion based on the need for a powerful father figure. He had the idea that religion is an obsessional neurosis. In other words, he's saying that most of the human race has obsessional neurosis, which he related to guilt, repressed emotions and suppressed sexuality generated by an unresolved Oedipus complex. Oedipus complex is something produced from Freud's imagination, which he says that the average human male subliminally suffers from. The idea is that each man or boy, when he's growing up, envies his father because the father is very powerful and dominates over his mother, and the boy has a latent desire to have sex with his mother, which his father does and he doesn't. So he's envious of his father and with this suppressed sexuality. Woo! That's a pretty weird idea. But on the basis of this, Sigmund Freud promoted that God and religion, it's an illusion. Religion is an obsessional neurosis, which we have to get free from in order to be normal or happy. Just as an aside,
the onus is not upon an atheist to say why there is not something. The onus is on a theist to say why there is. Having said that, it is a very interesting question, because a universe with a God would be a very different kind of universe than one without. So the most important reason is there simply are no reasons for the existence of a God. So the reasons against then would be you tick off on your fingers one by one the alleged reasons why there should be a God, such as the argument from design. Things look so beautifully designed, bananas and apples and things like that, and humans and kangaroos and so on. And they look as though they've been designed because that's what Darwinian natural selection does. It makes them look as though they're designed.
An American Gallup survey from 1984, as cited by Stephen Myers, found that persons reporting very high spiritual commitment were twice as likely than the least religious people to report being very happy. Similarly, the U.S. National Opinion Research Center reported from their surveys that 41% of the very happy people are those who feel extremely close to God. Another very influential figure, not as well known as Marx or Freud, but also tremendously influential, being one of the principal architects of the modern social sciences, Emil Durkheim. Much of his work was dedicated to demonstrating, or attempt to demonstrate, that religious phenomena are grounded in social and definitely not divine influences. Of course, these three atheistic intellectuals are not the only one. Some physicists, such as John Gribben and Paul Davies, as they state in their co-authored book, The Matter Myth, argue that matter is a sort of illusion or appearance produced by some mysterious and unknown substratum in interaction with the human mind. Well, you might get some Indian or Buddhistic similar theories. You can argue that matter is some sort of illusion, but don't test it out by running out in the road when there's a car coming at you at 50 miles an hour. Quantum physicists, such as Bernard Despagon, I don't know if I pronounced that properly, but anyway, he and others talk about a veiled reality that we can hardly imagine, which appears as solid physical objects only when observed. And when quantum physicists talk about imaginary time as being more real than real time, about the cosmos being a 10 or 11-dimensional curved space-time or collection of space-times, or electrons being probability waves in Hilbert space, we don't know whether matter is a solid foundation for reality after all. Isn't science supposed to be studying matter? What is it anyway? There is something. There is something there. There is something out there. It appears to be fairly solid objects, but modern physics suggests that the nature of reality is very different from what we see, and that it is possibly unimaginable. This is a paraphrased paragraph from Professor Keith Ward's book, Doubting Dawkins. Here's a quote from J. Maynard Smith's book, The Limitations of Evolutionary Theory. The individual is simply a device constructed by the genes to ensure the production of more genes like themselves. It seems like a stupid idea because it credits the biological molecules of the genes with a purposeful goal requiring high-level organization, coordination, and cooperation. But these are respected scientists, and they're putting their ideas out there again and again and again. saying that we're just chemicals, we're just genes, we're just matter, or maybe there is no matter. We're not individual living beings, it's just all an illusion. Some wag made up a saying, from goo to you via the zoo. That summarizes evolutionary theory. There was some goo, some sticky substance in the primordial soup. Remember the primordial soup? And it all bubbled, and this goo transformed into animals and then to humans. Simple organisms to aquatic life, to early mammals, to primates, to humans. Some slime grew on a rock and somehow it turned into you and me. In my estimation, Sam Harris is the most suave, well-spoken of the prominent atheists in the world today, and the most dangerous and misleading also, because he recommends meditation.
Virtually everyone, this basic incapacity to break the spell of identification with thought and just rest attention as consciousness in the present moment. Meditation is simply the act of doing that. Meditation is the ability to look at this thing you thought was your ego, that you thought was yourself, and not find it in a way that actually relieves you of the problem of egocentricity for that moment.
But he rigidly denies the existence of anything spiritual, and he tries to explain altered states of consciousness in meditation and mystical experiences in terms of neuroscience. It's just something going on in your brain. Now, the experience, we all experience at every moment we're experiencing, and that experience can be correlated with or mapped onto certain brain states, but it's not identical or reducible to brain states. Sam Harris is part of a broader phenomenon of secularizing spiritual practices, as seen in yoga, meditation, mindfulness, which have all been appropriated by materialists and stripped of their original spiritual goals, teachings, and practices.